Good morning, everybody. I welcome all councillors and members of the public to the latest meeting of the Northamptonshire Executive, including all those watching the meeting via the live stream on YouTube. Members are reminded to keep your microphones muted unless invited to speak. Before we start the meeting, I wonder if we could begin our proceedings. I would like to ask all members and officers, as well as those in the public gallery, if they are able to stand for a minute's silence in memory of the 20th anniversary of the London bombings, remembering all those affected by this tragedy, including Corby's own Jonathan Downey. Thank you. Thank you very much. So to item number 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies for absence?
No, Chairman.
We have received apologies for absence from Camilla Coulson-Patel, Director of Law and Governance. No other apologies? Thank you. Minutes of the meeting that was held on the 17th of June. The minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of June are set out on pages 5 to 26 of the agenda pack. Are there any comments in respect of their accuracy? Please may I have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes. Councillor Kirk-Harrison to move, Councillor Jan O'Hara to second. Can we have a show of hands, all those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. So now we come to agenda item 3, the members' declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members? I can't see any, so thank you very much for that, if that could be recorded. So on to agenda item 4, the notifications of requests to address the meeting. Now, we have received requests to speak on agenda items 5 to 9. Speakers will be invited to address the Executive in turn at the appropriate point in accordance with Part 2, paragraph 8.1.2 of the Constitution. Speakers are reminded that participation at Executive is limited to statements only, which may be taken into account following officer presentation of the report and during member debate. So on item number 5, we have on the corporate plan, Chris Ashton, Councillor Jim Hakewell and Lynn Buckingham. Item 6, the Department of Funding Transport, Chris Ashton, Councillor. On home to school transport, item 7, Chris Ashton, Councillor Jim Hakewell and Lynn Buckingham. I can't see Lynn here actually yet, she might still arrive. On item 8, housing maintenance and development, Chris Ashton. And item 9, the Northamptonshire Cultural Masterplan, Councillor Trevor Conway as Chair of Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee. Okay, so we come to agenda item 5, which is the corporate plan. Chris Ashton, I wonder if I could invite you to address the meeting. You have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for all your hard work on this. At the last executive meeting, the Council declared that it would be holding its own Doge-style spending and efficiency review. Can this council confirm that this review will be completed by the end of this month so that it can be used to ensure the officers are fully informed on possible cuts before the corporate plan is created, so they can reassess the council's priorities for the future and key commitments based on where the cuts land? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Can I ask now to invite Jim Hakewell, Councillor Jim Hakewell, to address the meeting? Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Set my stopwatch. I can see that a lot of thought has gone into the preparation of this report, and I'm really pleased that the role of scrutiny in general and corporate scrutiny in particular is given significant weight. This will enable councillors and staff colleagues in particular, along with the wide range of other people and businesses who rely on our services, to contribute and engage with open and transparent scrutiny. I've run through some of the paragraphs, Chairman. I'm happy to let you have a copy of this. 2.3 reaffirms the Council's annual financial budget is corporate scrutiny. 2.5, effective wide-reaching public engagement and consultation. I know we've spoken on this, and it's the community we serve, and as a chair of scrutiny, I want to do the maximum to bring the community in, not only because they should be, but because they have good ideas that we probably didn't think of. I very much warm to the idea of naming it something other than corporate plan, which to many in our communities is not a particularly familiarly recognised word. It's also important to draw the views and opinions of councillor colleagues on our 100+ town and parish councils, including parish meetings, who we rely on to be our partners in many of the services that we actually deliver. 2.7, detailed scrutiny, October 25. Yes, I'm up for it, and I'm sure our scrutiny committee is up for it, and we'll also welcome others to come to that and to contribute. I would favour in 4.10 a fresh approach rather than simply refreshing the current corporate plan to make it simple and follow more understandably to the wider community. It's an old concept, but the idea of the golden thread that runs through from frontline services colleagues to political and managerial leadership and back down again would give clarity for everyone involved with the council as to what we aim to achieve. 5.3, performance indicators. At our scrutiny meeting, we're going to talk about performance indicators and which ones we pick up and use rather than just a mass of data in that way. 5.7, a simple, clear and concise corporate plan will provide the best possible starting point. So basically, Chairman, I'm condoning, reinforcing a lot of what is in the corporate plan potential. 7.6.2, scrutiny working group meeting could be set up consisting of all the chairs and deputy chairs of the different scrutiny committees. Absolutely up for that as well. I'm prepared to put the time and energy in. So finally, I'm looking forward to working with all colleagues and particularly with cross-party councillors on corporate scrutiny and to establish a working group to focus on the corporate plan. Thank you very much for letting me speak and being within 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hakewell, and thank you for your support in the early weeks of this new administration. It is much appreciated. I would like to invite Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting, but I don't think she's here. Okay, so we will move on. I would now like to invite Guy Holloway, Assistant Chief Executive, to introduce this important report. Thank you.
Chair, thank you, and good morning, and also thank you for the comments as well from speakers. Thank you. This report, Chair, sets out the process, key steps and milestones for developing, consulting upon, scrutinising and adopting a new corporate plan for the Council. Now, the corporate plan is a vital part of the Council's strategic budget and policy framework as set out in the Council's constitution. It is, however, more than a strategy document. It is a commitment or a series of commitments the Council makes to residents, businesses, partner organisations and key stakeholders across Northamptonshire. The corporate plan will set out the Council's vision, its ambitions and priorities, and it guides how the Council will allocate its limited resources to meet what is often growing demand for services. It is really important not to see the corporate plan as a standalone document in itself. It aligns closely with other strategies such as the Big 50 vision for Northamptonshire and, importantly, the Council's financial strategy, and it sits at the top of the strategic planning framework. It helps shape everything from the Council's budget, its workforce strategy and day-to-day activity of the Council staff. The report sets out a number of factors that are considered important when making a good aspirational plan for the future, and that can count for any organisation. And they're factors that a plan needs, such as to be visionary, setting out a long-term set of goals and aspirations, be relevant, reflecting the needs of the local community, be affordable, guided by the resources the Council has available, be deliverable, setting out clear actions and plans, supported by other policies and strategies, and be measurable, be vital, so that the Council can track progress. And I think one thing that's really important and shouldn't be overlooked is it needs to be understandable, written in plain language and not in Council jargon. On this latter point, Chair, you will note the report proposes that exec members consider giving the corporate plan a more engaging and meaningful name when it is shared more widely with the public. And I'm not proposing that discussion needs to take place now, Chair. It doesn't need to be decided now, but it's something that I think would be worth considering as you move forwards. The report also sets out a plan for how the corporate plan can be developed, so it can be shaped through stakeholder engagement, through workshops and feedback sessions, through public consultation, suggested starting in September, cross-party scrutiny, including consideration at Corporate Scrutiny Committee. The report also outlines the intention to set up a dedicated SharePoint site with the aim of keeping members informed and involved through the process, so there is transparency and symmetry of information. The report goes on to set out an indicative timeline. I'm keen to point out it's indicative, Chair. So it sets that in July, we start the process and the Council starts the initial drafting. In August, there's development of a high-level summary of the plan. In September, a public consultation. October, scrutiny and feedback. And November, a final draft to Executive. And December, formal adoption by full Council. Now, Chair, I'm keen to point out that that is an indicative plan, and I make the point in the report that it's important that the corporate plan behaves more like a living document, something that isn't too rigid and set in stone. So I think some flexibility is important, but we'll also need to go through the right constitutional steps in order to get approval. So in terms of the next steps, subject to approval of the recommendations set out in the report, officer colleagues will begin the process of working with members to draft a corporate plan and preparing it for consultation. Assistance will be provided in setting up and supporting engagement activities with key stakeholders. Updates will be shared via the members' intranet and SharePoint site, and we'll also be able to draw on the results of the resident satisfaction survey, which is currently in progress. And for reference, Chair, and never want to miss an opportunity to promote something, closes on the 27th of July. So bringing my presentation of this report to a conclusion, the corporate plan provides an opportunity for the Council to be bold, to be ambitious, and to be very clear about its future priorities. It can help the Council engage meaningfully with local communities, focus its efforts and deliver more modern and effective public services. In terms of recommendations, Chair, the report sets out two key recommendations. Firstly, that members note the importance of the corporate plan and the suggestion that a more user-friendly name is used when communicating the plan to the wider public. And secondly, that members approve the key stages, activities and indicative milestones for the development of the corporate plan through to its formal adoption at full Council as set out in the report. Chair, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Guy. And I'm absolutely delighted that we have started the formal process of writing the new administration's first corporate plan. This is an opportunity to take the Council and its services to the next level. I agree that we need to call the corporate plan something more meaningful. Members will remember that we redrafted the Leaders' Update to the local link. By the way, it's having an amazing number of responses, which I'm really pleased about. I look forward to engaging and consulting with our local communities. They are the heart of Northamptonshire. And scrutiny, as has been said, will be very important, and I appreciate the opportunity to have a meaningful dialogue with the chairs and deputy chairs of the council's scrutiny committees to help ensure that we get the very best out of our scrutiny process. So I formally propose the motion as detailed. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Eddie MacDonald. Would you like to speak on this, Councillor MacDonald?
Yeah, thank you. The approach set out in this report provides the opportunity to work with our local communities, officers, fellow members and other stakeholders. Basically, we're setting out our aims, our ambitions and our future priorities. I'm very supportive of the recommendations and like other members here, I look forward to working alongside our stakeholders so that we get things right first time. Thank you.
I now open it up to debate from other members of the executive. Councillor Bennyworth, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was reminded as I read through this document of an age-old adage, which is, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So I think this is a really important document for us to consider today, and I very much appreciate all of the work that's gone into it. So I welcome the report and the timelines that it sets out, although, as Guy has pointed out, the thing is that we need to listen to our residents and we need to get it right. So if that means taking a little more time to get it right, then I'm personally quite flexible on that particular point, but I welcome the indicative timelines. Clearly, there's a strong dialogue and relationship with our budgeting process, and so I think the two things need to go hand in hand. I think that's imperative, and I think it's important that the corporate plan is appropriate, affordable, and is a proactive document. I won't go into that because I think Guy's already stolen my thunder on that particular point. Finally, the corporate plan must be clear and easy to understand, something that all our residents can understand, with straightforward priorities, costs and targets that can be measured very clearly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Cheatley.
Good morning all. As member of for Finance, I know too well that the Northamptonshire Council is facing significant challenges, sorry to put the despondent tone on, particularly due to the rising demand for critical services such as children's and adult social care. So we've got to make sure that we encompass those issues. So with limited financial growth on the horizon, it's essential that we adopt a smarter, more innovative ways of working to meet these needs. Now, clearly defining our corporate priorities for the years ahead will be crucial. Alongside this, we must manage public and stakeholder expectations by being transparent about what we can realistically deliver within our available resources. So it's about bringing the public along with us, bringing our residents along with us, and explaining ourselves as we go along, and listening to what they say. Our efforts must be strategically focused on the areas where investment will have the greatest impact, both in addressing current pressures and in reducing future demand. There is a considerable potential to improve in this space. To succeed, our ambitions must be fully aligned with a robust workforce strategy and a financially sustainable 4-year budget plan. This alignment will be key to driving both capacity and capability. The corporate plan provides a platform to articulate our approach to becoming a more efficient and productive organisation. Now, we're committed to delivering value for money and high-quality public services for the residents of Northamptonshire. Now, while we've made an encouraging start, we must now clearly set out how we will achieve these objectives. We also need to consider how we as a council, and in collaboration with our partners, can work more intelligently to address the root causes of challenges. So rather than continually reacting to the symptoms, prevention and early intervention must be at the heart of our service delivery model. And finally, we must embrace emerging technologies setting out a clear strategy for the use of tools such as artificial intelligence. They will be essential in transforming service delivery, enhancing outcomes, and building a modern council that is fit for the future. I've already had some really positive, good meetings with people sat around the table already in relation to AI. There's some really exciting stuff that's being talked about within the council at the moment, and I'm really looking forward to continuing those conversations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Councillor Ken Harrington.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to endorse everything that has been said and to also say that I am fully supportive of the recommendations as set out in the report. I agree that we have already been working hard to understand the priorities of our local residents and businesses. I look forward to setting out our regulatory priorities moving forward, but also, and I think this is really important, the dialogue we continue to have with our local communities as we set out our plan. We need to keep in mind that the process does not stop when we approve our plan for the future. We need to continue the dialogue and continue to take stock of our approach and refine it as we move forwards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Harrington. Any other members? Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
Thank you, Chair. So last week I met with the Youth Advisory Council, and so I am really keen that the youth of our Northamptonshire gets their voice as part of that plan. So I'm looking forward to working with them over the coming months to bring their ideas into the plan, but also families. Families are a really important focus for our new plan. There are clear and strong links between families and education and with the prosperity of our local area. We need to make sure that we are equipping our children with the right knowledge and skills to give them the best start in life. Too many children are leaving school without attaining their full potential, and the reasons for this are complex and varied. We need to address complex issues like this in the corporate plan, but also keep in mind that this issue cuts across all of the organisations. We need to strengthen our joined up approach with partners to tackle these issues. We also have the long-awaited SEN reforms happening in, hopefully being released in autumn 2025 by the national government, and this will steer us to what we can do to help anyone who has SEND issues and with our schools and partners. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you, Chair. You can probably guess where I'm going to focus my key priority. And we've spoken a lot this morning, thank you, Councillor Cheatley, about investment having the greatest impact and prevention. And Guy very generously pointed out that the corporate plan confirms we have limited resources. I have better news on that in articles in the next article in the paper. I inherited the highways in a, and I quote, deteriorating condition, and our plan at that time meant that the best we could manage was potentially to maintain that condition of the highways. I have different ideas and different plans. I mentioned many of them to Chamber in our last executive meeting, our last full council meeting. We will work on the limited resources that we have. We need to make a noise to our constituents about the work we are doing. There's an awful lot of work going on highways. There's a tremendous success stories and some massive challenges, and more of that, as I say, in Article 6. But we've got to be clear about what we can do and what we can't do, what we can afford and what we cannot, and we've got to be really upfront with our constituents about the challenges that we face. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Jan O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with everything my colleagues have said. I think, 2 months in and we've made some amazing progress. I think one of the biggest things is that at the moment we've got the council's first residence satisfaction survey. That's out at the moment, and there's some questions included in that which will help inform our future priorities, and I think it will inspire conversation and give us some fresh ideas as to what might work in different areas, because obviously we all represent different areas. and they all have different focuses and they have different challenges. So I think doing this survey is really going to be helpful to us as a council, because we're all here to serve our communities. I'm excited to see the council's new plan for the future and develop it and help it, and and I'm happy with the recommendations set out in this report. And I'd just like to say thank you all our officers really for all the work that they're doing to make this council the best it can be. And at the end of the day, we're custodians at the moment, but I think we're amazing custodians that are going to make Northamptonshire the best in the country. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you for that. Any other members? Councillor Kirk Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. And just building on some of the other comments that have been made today, I'm actually really excited that this is going to be a living document. Obviously, there are some constraints involving the Constitution that we need to work through, but I think it's really important to grow and to change with the changing environment. I think being able to add or remove items from the plan fairly quickly is really important as things become more relevant. So ultimately, the fact that it's going to be, we're going to be agile and be able to keep it under review, I think is a really, really good thing. And also, just a word, if I can, on consultation. I think it's important to work with as many people and groups as possible about this. I think cross-party working is absolutely vital. I've spoken about that many, many times. We were all elected to do a job. We've all got a voice, and that needs to be heard and recorded. But I think perhaps most importantly is that we were elected by the public. This document needs to be a voice of the public. The priorities need to be set by them. So on that front, I think it's important that we engage with, as I say, as many people as possible, in particular the harder to reach and the communities that perhaps don't speak up as often as they should, certainly not to us. So obviously this is going to include parish councils, community groups, even stopping people on the street. I think ultimately anybody who will listen, we need to get their opinion on this so it can feed in. That's all I wanted to say, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there's anyone else. Oh, yes, there is. Councillor Gregory Wilcox, do you wish to add anything?
What am I discussing? What were we saying? Sorry, I was... on the corporate plan. Oh yes, sorry, I do apologise. I think our corporate plan will lead to stronger communities, and these are a major of our thinking, because if they're strong, then the people within Northants, I think, will be happier and more supportive of one another. From the older, better helped by the younger, and more understood by those generations. And the more interaction between the people within clubs, sporting, walking, talking, etc., I think it'll promote harmony and understanding and the success that we will achieve in Northants.
Thank you ever so much for that. That's a full house. That must be a first. But just to sum up, Councillor O'Hara mentioned 2 months. It isn't actually yet 2 months since this executive committee was put together, and I'd just like to thank every one of you for the hard work that you've put in these weeks, and also the support from our officers, which has been absolutely brilliant. With that, I note the recommendations set out on page 29 of the agenda pack. They have been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show of hands for those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you for that. So, members, now we come to agenda item 6, the Department for Transport Capital Funding. I'd like to invite Chris Ashton to enter the floor of the meeting. And Chris, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. It's great to hear that the Labour government are investing so strongly in transport in Northamptonshire, with a quote from your report that the funding is significantly more than the council has received for general transport improvements to date. And quote, it also provides an opportunity to provide a significant increase in the amount that can be spent on highways and maintenance. Previously, this council received 3.28 million specifically for pothole repairs, on top of the funding just provided, yet our roads seem no better. While the government are doing their job by providing funding, there needs to be a concerted effort at the council level to ensure that the work is being done and that the council are getting the best value for this money. Can the council confirm how they opted to spend the 3.28 million? I'm also glad to see that despite some comments at the last executive meeting in regards to projects to protect the environment, ensuring a better future, this report seems to suggest that the local cycling, walking and infrastructure plans are going to continue. Will this council continue to seek funding to continue work on the promises set out in these plans? And finally, it is great to see that there is an intention to use part of this money on improved bus routes. Can the council confirm if this will go to improving services on existing routes, creating new routes, or into dodgy contracts? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite Councillor Helen Harrison to address the meeting. Councillor Harrison, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'd just like to start by apologising. It seems that at the last executive meeting, I posed a series of questions both to officers and to executive members, which I thought was quite important before they made a decision. But it turns out that's unconstitutional and that I am not allowed to ask questions. So if anything I say sounds like a question, I assure you it's not. I am making a statement. And my statement is this: I'm absolutely welcome this report. It's absolutely brilliant to see more money coming to Northamptonshire to be spent on travel projects. And I just wanted to say, in terms of the local transport grant funding, the spending of that, the 7.728 million over this next year, I really look forward to seeing which schemes go into that and how the decisions are made as to which schemes are prioritised for that funding. And then the only slight, not criticism, but the only thing that I wanted to make as a statement on this was about the Consolidated Active Travel Fund priority schemes. In the report, and I may have missed some of the details, so forgive me if I've got this wrong, but it seems to be focusing on the towns of Corby, Kettering and Wellingborough, and just one of those schemes then going forward. You know, Northamptonshire obviously is constituted of far more than just Corby, Wellingborough, and Kettering. Rushden is a very similar sized town, for example, to Wellingborough. But we've got all sorts of schemes that could, you know, fall into this funding bracket that, you know, from smaller places like Oundle, Thrapston, Desborough, Raunds, just to name but a few. So I would just beg you not to ignore our other towns. If it's suitable for this scheme, I think schemes should be able to come forward from any part of Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I would say that any statements, of course, will be picked up by the executive member or indeed our officers. We're just following the Constitution as it was written from vesting day of this council. So now I'd like to invite Robert Foskett to address this meeting. Mr. Foskett, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I speak as a resident of Oundle, and I also stood in the local elections in May. I would like to speak about the bus service improvement plan, which is referred to in this report. I addressed the executive on this a year ago when the plan was agreed. I was very supportive of the proposals to expand the level of service and improve the network infrastructure. I feel it would be beneficial to reflect on the implementation of the plan so far to ensure that attempts to improve public transport in Northants are more effective in future. The Service 94 between Oundle and Rushden Lakes, which was introduced with funding from the plan, had a difficult start. It was publicly launched by a different operator to the one intended before a timetable had been finalised, and for a significant period of time there was no advertising of services on the bus stop in Oundle. When the intended supplier was able to take over, due to driver shortages, they could only operate 2 of the 6 timetable services, which meant that people from Oundle wanting to go shopping at Rushden Lakes wouldn't actually be able to get home again. I'm pleased that the timetable is now fully operating, but this could still be improved for the convenience of shoppers. Given that the journey to Rushden Lakes is an hour, one would imagine that the average user would want to spend more than an hour shopping. The BSIP commits to the introduction of a service between Oundle and Stamford to provide a peak and shopping bus journey. This has not yet been introduced, and I hope that the Council will be able to update residents on this. I also hope that lessons will be learnt from the implementation of the 94 service so that some of those issues aren't repeated. Since the BSIP is being implemented using government funding, and I would like to thank the government for providing this funding, the focus should be on ensuring that this is funding effective improvements. In terms of services established by the BSIP funding, this is particularly the case, given the intention that the funding is short-term to enable them to become commercially viable. I would also briefly like to reiterate the points that I made last year, that reference in the plan to bus stops being well located in new developments is an important point, but this requires services to be amended to serve them. Otherwise, there's no use for the well-placed bus stops. This is not something which has happened in Oundle, and I think that's everything, and I hope that I haven't accidentally asked any questions.
Thank you very much for that, and I'd just like to say that we've inherited the situation with regard to the bus services that you're referring to, and I'm sure Councillor Chris McGiffin will pick up on those points either today or in correspondence with you as we move forward. So without further ado, I'd like to now invite George Candler, the Executive Director of Place and Economy, to introduce this report. George.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. The purpose of this report before the Executive this morning is both to note the receipt of the additional capital funding from the Department for Transport and also to approve the application of funds. By way of background in relation to this report, each year the Department for Transport provides the Council with capital funding to support its work in maintaining and improving Northamptonshire's highway and transport networks. And you will note in section 4.2 of the report that funding allocations to date for Northamptonshire total £16.330 million per annum, which were known or anticipated for this current financial year and subsequent years, and were in the General Fund capital programme that was approved by full Council back in February of this year. The maintenance block, integrated transport block and bus service improvement plan allocations for 2025-26, i.e. this financial year, are all confirmed. The maintenance incentive element for 25-26 is subject to the provision of satisfactory information which we've set out in Appendix A attached to this report to the Department of Transport, and we do expect that this funding will be confirmed later in 2025, and obviously that's not insignificant in just over £800,000. The Council was aware funding allocations for future years had not been confirmed by the Department for Transport for budgeting purposes, although our capital programme, in being prudent, had assumed the same allocations for the next 3 financial years as part of its wider medium-term financial planning. Sections 4.5, 4.6 and 4.7 explain in a little more detail what each funding monies are used for each of those funding allocations. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of individual funding allocations that previously we've been adhering to. More recently, and since the capital programme has been approved, the Department for Transport has announced further additional capital funding, and that's detailed in the table at 4.8, and totals £55.287 million over the medium-term financial plan to 2029-2030. The local transport grant allocations for 2026-27 will replace and supersede the previous allocations of the integrated transport block funding that I've previously referred to. And the report in front of you also highlights some of the details behind these two new funding allocations, and these are detailed in section 5 of the report. So briefly, active travel funding is an allocation of 0.191 million, and the consolidated active travel fund of 0.508 million pounds. And these are effectively capital allocations for the financial years 24-25 and 25-26 respectively. Although the funding that we've got for this clearly can't be spent in that retrospective year, so we can use it now. However, the Department for Transport, as with all funding allocations, do expect a timely spend of these funds, and therefore it's important that as a council we have a strategic plan in the way that we are going to spend those funds, so that we are ready for instances such as this where we have tight timelines to deliver against. This is the first time that specific active travel capital funding has been allocated to councils on a formulaic basis, rather than in previous years where we've had to bid for the monies, and obviously sometimes we are successful, sometimes we're not. And as has already been highlighted by the speakers this morning, the funding is largely intended for the construction of new active travel routes, and these need to comply again with specific guidance notes that the Department for Transport issue. Drawing your attention to previous decisions, members may be aware that the local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, which are conveniently abbreviated to LC WIPs, but I'll repeat the word. The council has developed these for its larger towns in recent years, although that work remains ongoing. So to give some reassurance to Councillor Harrison and Mr Foskett in those points, that clearly we will want to look at those as well, and those areas that you've referred to. The initial intention, as the report states in section 5.5, is to use the active travel funding to deliver a contraflow cycle lane in Montague Street in Kettering. By way of explanation, that scheme was selected because it's the highest priority and best value for money for delivery within the Kettering local cycling, walking and infrastructure plan, and is affordable within that funding envelope that we've got at the moment and need to spend within that fairly tight time frame. And again, members may be aware that there was a significant amount of consultation that was undertaken at the time with the public, with local stakeholders and elected members to develop our local cycling, walking and infrastructure plans. And that helped us to, as a council, prioritise the routes that have been identified within each of those plans. And as I say, that enables us then to be very quick and able to respond to funding allocations that come forward from central government. Turning to the local transport grant of £7.728 million in this financial year, this can be spent on quite a wide and varied range of schemes, including maintenance. The funding, as the report highlights, is significantly more than the council has received for general transport improvements to date, and does give us an opportunity to deliver schemes that have previously been unaffordable. It also provides us with an opportunity to provide a significant increase in the amount that we can spend on highway maintenance, which I know is a key focus for all of us and all of our residents. At the moment, work is now underway to identify the best schemes that can be delivered within the necessary timescales that the DFT, Department for Transport, lays out. And consultation remains ongoing with Councillor McGiffin, the Executive Member for Highways and Travel, to review those proposals and agree a final list of proposals based on the needs of the highways network and in line with both our asset management policy, which has already previously been agreed by the Executive, and the local transport plan. The Department for Transport have not yet announced the funding conditions which will apply to the local transport grant funding for 2026-27 onwards, although it is anticipated that there will be similar flexibility in terms of what that funding can be spent on, i.e. quite a broad brush, and enable some of that funding as well to be spent on maintenance. The advancement the advance announcement of that funding over a 4-year window as opposed to annually, which we've previously been used to, does now provide us time as a council for a medium-term delivery programme to be developed. And also, as it replaces the integrated transport block funding, we need to be mindful that a proportion of that would still need to be spent on some of those smaller scale measures, such as new crossings, road safety improvements and traffic signal upgrades, if such work is to continue. So drawing to a conclusion, in terms of next steps, you'll see under section 6 that we will continue to develop the active travel schemes outlined in section 5.5 of the report, and we'll want to take those preliminary designs back out to public consultation around Montague Street later this year. And we will continue to develop a programme of schemes, as I previously mentioned, around the local transport grant for discussion and approval by the executive lead member. So in conclusion, this report is positive in terms of the future financing investment over the medium term into our highways network and also into our active travel schemes. And I therefore draw members' attention to recommendations in 3.1, A to E, for the reasons set out at 3.2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that report. I'd now like to invite members to debate this from the floor. Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for that very detailed presentation. It's taken away most of my notes. So what's left? Just to underscore the point, this is new money to us. It does replace an element of the I wish I understood what the detail was in terms of the description of how the money is presented to us. But long story short is we've got an extra £7.7+ million to spend this year. It allows us some flexibility, as we have, as George has rightly pointed out. I was presented with 4 options. The options included just spend it all on road repairs. I was tempted for a while until I saw that there would then be other capital and expensive and expenditure that would grow if they weren't dealt with, issues and projects. The option we landed at contains a mixture of the points that George made in terms of bus improvements, in terms of highway, lighting and other maintenance improvements, in terms of the LC whip support. But it also allows us to deal with a long outstanding issue on Station Road in Earls Barton, which has got to be the worst road in Northamptonshire. That cost of repairing the bridge and then completely resurfacing that road will cost £1.2 million of this grant. There are other major capital works there, including the bridge over the River Nen on the A6, which needs substantial repair to stop further deterioration. That work will be scheduled over a period of years because of the impact on traffic. It'll be long-term weekend closures for a number of weeks for the next 3 years, possibly 2 or 3 weeks per year. But it allows us to then still add a further £5+ million to pothole and general road repairs, which we didn't have at the start of this administration. And for that, I also am very grateful. I will deal with some of the detail directly pointed out by Chris and Helen and Rob, and I'll respond to you formally with that detail. Some of it's beyond me at this moment because I don't know precise detail about, for instance, the allocation of the bus element of this. What else did I say? we're not allowed to spend it on large capital projects. We leave that to Heidi Alexander. And just to point on those major road networks and large repair schemes that were announced by Heidi Alexander in Parliament last week, or on the 8th, the A43 Kettering dualling and the Isham bypass remain points for consideration longer term. But that doesn't include us, but I strongly recommend that we accept the points made in the agenda, point 6, and commend it to the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll cross that one out about the Isham bypass. I was going to mention 37 years in discussion. Any other members wish to say anything? Councillor Cheatley.
Just the obvious recognition, really, that obviously I'm pleased to see the additional funding that's been allocated from the Department of Transport and look forward to seeing how it's being spent. Thank you very much for the detailed report from both of you, in fact. It's important this funding be recognised that it's going to help improve connectivity across North Northamptonshire, and I look forward to seeing the detail of where the money will be spent in the coming weeks and months. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Harrington.
Chair, I really am very, very pleased, and I'm really quite excited to see that for the very first time we've got specific active travel capital funding allocated to councils on a formulaic basis rather than in response to bids. The funding can now kickstart the work done on our local cycling and walking infrastructure, plans which the council has developed for its larger towns in recent years. Whilst the funding available is modest in terms of the estimated costs of the improvements outlined in the LCWIPs, it is nonetheless welcomed and allows us to deliver a contraflow cycle lane in Montague Street, Kettering. I'd like to, at this point, just endorse or to reassure Councillor Helen Harrison that as long as I'm on the executive, I shall not ignore other towns and certainly won't ignore Wellingborough. This scheme was selected because it is the highest priority and best value for money for delivery within the Kettering LCWIP and affordable within the funding available. Thank you, Chair.
Any other members? Okay, then I commend the work that has been done since the 22nd of May with our executive member and our officers on highways. The recommendations are set out on page 43 of the agenda pack. They have been moved by Councillor McGriffin, seconded. Yeah. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we'll move swiftly on to agenda item 7, the Home to School Transport Policy for pupils of statutory school age 5 to 16, reception to year 11. I'd like to invite Chris Ashton to address the meeting. Mr. Ashton, you again have 3 minutes to make your statement.
Good morning. Thank you. Last week, a councillor for Kent County Council, the Member of Parliament for Clacton, called for reduced spending on this very topic at that council. While I'm glad that this council does consistently split from the policies of their national party, there is still a concern that it may be forced to follow suit. Can this council categorically confirm that it will not be reducing spending on school transport to ensure that children can get into the schools that they need and get the education they deserve? Having spoken to residents in Wellingborough, there is also the question of why have school streets not been considered as part of this school transport plans to ensure safety of students near schools. I know that my colleague on Wellingborough Town Council, Councillor Valerie Anslow, has been working with the Avenue School in Wellingborough on a campaign regarding school streets, and I know that her, along with parents and carers at the school, would appreciate the council investigating how school streets could be implemented into this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'd now like to invite Councillor Jim Hakewell to address the meeting. Councillor Hakewell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. My attention was drawn to 7.111, 7.12, which talks about the proposed changes do not change eligibility of entitlement, and there's no financial implication. 7.1.2, mitigations against increased demand are being put in place through the development of alternative transport options, including support for commercial services. I wrote this before your announcement of no questions, so I decided to ask myself the question, where would scrutiny of these mitigations take place in 7.1.2? We did have a situation whereby the policy was reviewed and changed by our contractors, Kia, who determined that home-to-school transport between Rothwell and Desborough was redefined to be a safe route for walking, some months after I had received assurances from the then Executive Committee that this route would continue to be considered eligible for student transport. The decision was reversed after it became public knowledge that the buses were to be removed. The shock of the proposed changes caused considerable concern, particularly for Desborough parents and guardians. My point is that if routes are to be evaluated by our contractors, highways colleagues, there should be consultation with parents and guardians before decisions are made. I hope that this is inferred, if not explicit, in the policy. It's also important to communicate the almost inevitable increases in cost to parents and guardians for their homeschool transport that are currently not being brought before scrutiny when fees and charges are annually set. So it becomes not a big surprise, but a surprise, particularly to existing parents and guardians, the increase in the cost for their children to get to the school that they're allocated to. We also heard at the recent Local Government Association conference that some of the additional school transport safety considerations that were brought in during the COVID pandemic may be continuing, whereas a review might save expenditure while still providing suitable transport out with the COVID pandemic. I would like to think that some form of analysis and scrutiny will take place on this as we strive to hold expenditure whilst retaining safety for students. Clearly, home-to-school transport has had a meteoric increase in funding, and I'm sure that we should find some scrutiny to try and use best practice elsewhere, but to try and curtail that demand-led budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hakewell. Before I ask George to present the report, this was actually about school transport policy, but just picking up on the mention of school streets, especially in Wellingborough, we have got school streets in Wellingborough. The Avenue is in my ward, and I can assure you that the vast majority of people in the Avenue do not want that to be a school street, and we're all about listening to our residents. So with that, I'll hand over to George to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So by way of background to this report, I think it's first of all important to note that there's a statutory obligation for ourselves as the local authority to publish our policy on home-to-school travel for children at that compulsory school age, and also setting out our arrangements for providing support to eligible children of a statutory school age to enable them to access education. And primarily the policy should enable parents to understand easily whether their child is eligible for free home-to-school travel or any other help with home-to-school travel the local authority provides under its discretionary powers. In section 4 of the report, it lays out the legislation, the council's discretionary powers, eligibility, and also some specific reference around children with special educational needs and disabilities. Again, by way of background, the policy was substantially amended in summer 2023 and was then subsequently adopted on the 13th of July 2023. And that then took effect for the academic year beginning autumn term 2024. The purpose of bringing this report here this morning is, since then, there's been ongoing feedback and queries, questions, challenges from a broad mix of stakeholders, I think it's fair to say. Other council officers, elected members, the public, families, schools, head teachers, MPs, and therefore it's been identified that we need to clarify the policy by way of making some textual changes to improve both accessibility and readability and ultimately overall clarity for everyone that is reading it, because it's an important time, as we know, for parents and carers. The crucial thing to note is none of these changes are substantive. So what we mean by that is none of the changes affect the eligibility of pupils to transport assistance. But the changes do help to set out the council's policy and process more clearly. Now, as with the policy, these changes can't be implemented until the beginning of the autumn term 2026, usually in early September. But to ensure that we meet our statutory obligations, the policy document must be approved and published by the 19th of September 2025, hence bringing it here this morning for consideration. And this report, as you'll see in Appendix A, presents the proposed revisions to the policy for the approval by executive and therefore to seek permission to publish the final document as required under the legislation. The mention of demand, I think, is a fair point. Councillor Hakewell mentioned demand, and you'll see that there's reference drawn to that in section 4.7 of the report, which I'm not going to dwell on too much, but mainly just to draw attention to that the admissions round for the academic year 25-26, that as a council we've received more than 300 more new applications for September compared to the same period last year. And the report does articulate why there is that increasing demand, but nonetheless, that's a 40% increase in applications for the same period year on year. So we are mindful that similar to some of the service areas in adult social care and in children's services, that home to school transport is very much a demand-led service that we need to manage and consider a whole system approach towards. In terms of next steps, once members have debated and considered the recommendations, as mentioned, we need to publish this as a final version by the 19th of September. And also what we plan to do is to ensure that all head teachers in the area, as well as doing an extensive communications campaign, which will include press releases, to raise awareness of the existence of this new and modified policy. Consultation and scrutiny was mentioned. You'll see under section 7.5 that consultation is referenced, and you'll see we did seek advice from colleagues in legal services in relation to the need to consult or not, which and the responses there under 7.5.2. And similarly, clearly, we would, as with any report, as a council, we will need to consider how we continue to scrutinise this important area going forward and how this fits into the forward plan for the Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee. So to conclude, executive members, we know this area of work affects many children and young people, parents and carers, as well as schools across Northamptonshire. And we believe this clarification within the policy will make the process of applying easier from 2026 onwards. And therefore, I would draw members' attention to the recommendations in 3.1 for the reasons set out at 3.2. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite members to debate this from the floor, starting with Councillor Eddie MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I know what important area this is for the families across North Northamptonshire, and I welcome this report as it provides clarity or additional clarity on the existing policy, which was causing some people some concern. These changes reflect the ongoing feedback and the queries that have been received from council officers and members of the public. I want to thank all of those people who've contributed to this, because we do listen, and I very much welcome this report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure that will be figuring in the resident satisfaction survey that we are undertaking. So with that, Councillor Cheatley.
Good morning. Yeah, this report seeks to strike a careful balance between fulfilling the Council's statutory responsibilities and ensuring we continue to meet the needs of children and young people while operating within a financial framework that remains both affordable and sustainable. I think we've covered those points very well. I note that the ongoing collaboration between the Home to School Transport team and the Sustainable Transport team under the Bus Service Improvement Plan, their joint efforts to enhance the availability of commercial bus services in key areas are a positive step forward. This is a good development. I fully support the Council's approach to enabling students to travel via commercial bus services where appropriate. The important thing here is that the policy of purchasing bus passes for eligible students, that still remains. So this proves to be more cost effective for the Council and is a sensible and pragmatic solution. And I think also of note that this approach not only helps to reduce the overall cost and demand associated with pupil transport provision, but also delivers wider benefits. It expands travel options for residents of all ages, encourages lifelong familiarity with public transport, and strengthens the viability of local bus services for the whole community. So we're getting more people using the buses. That's got to be a good thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
Thank you, Chair. As Chair of the Stage 2 Appeals Panel for Home to School Transport, I want to acknowledge the importance of the revised policy that's brought before us today. The version does not introduce any changes to eligibility, but it does provide vital improvements in clarity and structure, something I particularly welcome, having seen firsthand how confusing some sections of the current policy have been for parents, especially around walking distances nearest suitable schools and the appeal process itself. The clearer wording will help both families and officers better understand their rights and responsibilities, and I hope this will reduce the number of cases where misunderstandings lead to distress and frustration, particularly for families of children with SEND. I also welcome the strengthened sections around sustainability and the increasing use of public transport where appropriate. This is a pragmatic and forward-thinking response to both rising demand and budget pressures. Given the 40% year-on-year increase in applications and the significant demographic changes across our area, this clarity and consistency is essential. I support the recommendation to approve and publish the revised policy, and I commend it to the Executive.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Chris McGiffin, and then you may wish to propose your report.
And Liz, you'll be pleased to know that I've completed my training to help support you with Chair of the Appeals Panels. This report is in no way a simple thrust to take cost away. Far from it. It's clear that the original document contained slightly misunderstood columns, and as there are no substantive changes and no financial or eligibility changes, we're essentially tidying up the grammar in the policy document and adding links to website addresses to further help applicants with their eligibility rules. As we say, the level of claims has grown from a historical number of about 3 per year appeals to, I think, 70 so far this year, almost entirely due to a misinterpretation of eligibility rules. So I'll support you with dealing with those appeals, and hopefully this report takes us to a better place in terms of reducing that demand overall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? That's a proposer. Do I have a seconder? I'll second. Councillor Elizabeth Wright, seconder. So all those in favour, members? Okay.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm mindful that we're about, I would hope, halfway through. So can we take a natural 10-minute break so everybody can have a little rest and resume in 10 minutes' time? Thank you very much. Thank you for that, members. We'll resume the meeting and we come to agenda item 8, which is the Housing Maintenance and Development Report. We have a speaker, and that is Chris Ashton. If you could enter from the public gallery, I would like to invite Chris Ashton to address the meeting. You have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your statement. Thank you.
Good morning. In this report, it gives the advice to find contractors for external windows and doors rather than expanding the internal pool of skills that the council can utilise. One of the reasons being given is value for money, and another being the need to invest in housing across North Northants. Although, is it really across North Northants if it is only half of the council area excluding Wellingborough and East Northants? But that is beside the point. Can the council advise the expected costing difference between hiring in-house DLO staff for this compared to hiring contractors? And could the council also advise, would it be cost to support existing staff specialising in these roles? As if this council truly wishes to invest in this council area and its residents, then it should aim to train and upskill its employees at every step. While there is a possibility that it may be cheaper in the short term to get contractors in, once the DLO gets on top of this, it would surely even out as best practices develop. Bringing this in-house would also ensure that quality control is in place. With the Labour government's changes to the law, it is raising the bar of quality that council houses should maintain. And the best way for the council to ensure it is meeting the new requirements is to bring as much as possible in-house. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite David Watts, the Executive Director for Adults, Health Partnerships and Housing, to introduce the report. David, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is primarily a procurement report requesting permission for delegations to undertake a procurement exercise for 3 contracts within our Housing and Development Service. They are 3 very distinct and separate contracts. The first one being General Fund revenue funded for cleaning and removal services for void properties where we receive properties back in a relatively poor condition. The budget for that is set on an annual basis based on prior year trends on the sort of work that we need to undertake that. We do have a small team that provides that, but as we never know when this work comes in, we do occasionally get some peaks and troughs. So having the ability to call off a contract and bring in some additional resource to supplement our in-house team is our preferred way of managing that. The second contract regarding the fitting of windows and external doors, whilst we do have trades that are able to do that activity and will undertake that activity, for example, replacing one damaged window, the costs involved in recruiting, training and expanding that team and then generally we would find that we would lose those trades to those external organisations that undertake this activity on a full-time basis as their only role of their only line of employment. The suggested route for contract on this is a mini competition via framework, so there will be a number of providers that are on a recognised procurement framework, and we will undertake a competitive exercise to appoint the appropriate contractor or contractors. The final contract is with regards to void renovations and maintenance. Again, we are suggesting an external commission for this, an open framework, because when we are trying to undertake these activities, we're never quite sure on what will be the scope of works for each property until we receive it back, have surveyed it, and have determined what work needs to be undertaken. Again, this is to supplement our existing work, so we already have teams that do this, but there are sometimes particular pieces of work where, for example, if our in-house electricians are already doing a rear wire of a property and it is more efficient to bring an external organisation in to do that, we would then undertake a piece of work to call off that framework and enable those activities to be completed. So it's a combination of supporting our existing teams to deliver the work but maintain efficiency in the way that we deliver those. Budget is already built into the medium-term financial plan, and appropriate contract awards structures will be agreed with our procurement team and legal to decide on the most appropriate route for managing that. The procurement work is set out in section 6 of the report, so that gives you the indicative timelines. But in summary, all 3 of the contracts will enable the housing service to upgrade void properties and turn around those void works more efficiently and release properties back for letting. And those properties make such a difference to our residents in Northamptonshire, so turning them around efficiently, complementing the work that we already do in-house is the preferred recommendations within the report. So I'm happy to conclude setting forward the recommendations at 3.1 in the report for the reasons set out in 3.2.
Thank you very much for that. And having efficiently commissioned contracts are an essential part of a well-run housing department and delivering great homes and safe homes for our residents within our directly owned properties. Supplementing our existing resources with some activity delivered by external organisations is essential to deal with some of the peaks that we see in demand. And this is great news for local businesses. The clearance contract and maintenance and renovation of major voids provides a great opportunity for businesses to bid for work based on the scope they feel they can manage. And I've witnessed this firsthand with regard to voids. Our aim is to get voids back into use as houses as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly can. So with that, I move the motion, but I'm sure some members might wish to say a few words. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting to note, I would suggest that 25% of our population are living with a disability. And there's about 30% of the population have got one or more long-term medical conditions. So I believe that any work that we can do on our properties to improve the living conditions has an even more positive impact for residents, and especially those that are living with disabilities or multiple health conditions. I'm also fully supportive of the decision to outsource the suppliers of these works that need doing to local providers, so that I feel we're encouraging and building our own local communities to get the work done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Anybody? Councillor Benningworth.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank David for the report and also for picking up very swiftly yesterday some queries that I had. So I really appreciate you coming back to me, which has provided me with further reassurance on the proposals before us. I believe that these contracts will support our housing improvement plan. As Chair of the Housing Improvement Board, I welcome this flexible approach, which enables NNC to supplement but not replace its existing in-house resources. I believe that this will make us more agile and more responsive and hopefully improve our void turnaround times. Finally, as the newly appointed Executive Member for Health and Leisure, as it says on my front plate here, but also having spent a couple of decades in the housing sector, I know how important it is to provide good quality homes for our residents and for wider public health and well-being. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Councillor Cheatley.
Yeah, investing in capital in the cyclical maintenance and renewal of our housing stock is a cost-effective strategy. By proactively maintaining the fabric of our homes, we significantly reduce the need for reactive repairs and the associated ongoing revenue expenditure. Commissioning external contractors to deliver elements of this work complements the efforts of our in-house housing service teams, It also allows us to accelerate delivery and meet programme targets more efficiently. Just as we all, individuals, periodically upgrade our heating systems, kitchens, bathrooms, doors and windows, this paper illustrates the magnitude of investment required when managing a portfolio of more than 8,000 properties. This approach is not only operationally efficient, but also delivers tangible benefits to residents. It improves the quality, comfort and sustainability of their homes. They're not just houses, they're homes, making a positive difference to the lives of those who live in them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other members wish to speak? Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
Thank you, Chair. We shouldn't underestimate the impact that these types of contracts can have for the children and families living in our council properties. New doors and windows and major works in our void properties create more efficient and welcoming homes. They have the potential to support a newborn child to have a great start in life, and efficient and warm homes can put money back into our residents' pockets. I'm wholly supportive of this procurement to further bolster the improvement we want to make at pace in people's homes.
Sorry, I was getting carried
Thank
away.
you,
I
Chair.
do apologise, Councillor Wright. So, do I see a seconder? Councillor Brian Bennyworth. Can we have a show of hands? All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So now we move on to agenda item 9, which is the Northamptonshire Cultural Master Plan. I'd like to invite Councillor Trevor Conway to address the meeting as the Chair of Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee to provide an overview on the feedback made by that committee when considering this report and its meeting held on the 1st of July. Over to you, Trevor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. As Chair of the Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee, we reviewed the Master Plan at the start of this month, and I'd like to thank Kerry and her team for all their hard work bringing this, getting it to this stage. I can confirm there was a lot of positive support for the Master Plan. We are particularly hopeful that with this we can somewhat level out the amount of funding we at North Northampton Council receive from the Arts Council England, which is currently £1.80 per head in North Northants, compared to £6.19 per head in West Northants and £12.16 per head nationally. There's a fantastic opportunity for us to realise, and this master plan is a fantastic start to achieving this. The only real concerns we had were around the LVEP. This has been removed from the report and will be reviewed before coming back to us at the committee. On this basis, we fully support this report and its recommendations to commission a local organisation to design and produce the master plan for publication, to establish a working group to further develop the action plan, including assigning and agreeing lead organisation against each action, and to further engagement with Arts Council England and with key cultural partners to confirm the most optimum ways to secure funding in order to support the establishment of a North Northamptonshire Cultural Collaboration Partnership. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So I'd now like to invite Kerry Purnell to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report introduces the North Northamptonshire Cultural Master Plan. It's not solely a strategy for the council and its assets, but a place-based plan designed to provide all stakeholders with a shared vision and direction. And to that end, it's been co-produced with a broad range of organisations from across the cultural, heritage, arts, performance and creative industry sectors, and with contributors from across private, public, voluntary community organisations. It takes a place-based approach to culture, as in what does that mean for North Northamptonshire, with a real holistic view and trying to recognise that culture means different things to different people across our communities. And what is important is not to exclude people from arts, culture and heritage by making it one thing and not another. The work to produce this master plan has been funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It's involved extensive engagement with over 120 stakeholders, including site visits, 2 workshops, lots of one-on-one conversations, and culminated in a cultural summit that was held at the end of March. An insights report was produced after the initial engagement phase, which highlighted a number of key considerations which have gone on to inform the master plan. These include culture is seen as essential to North Northamptonshire's Big 50 vision, building a sense of place and identity. There is definitely untapped potential and opportunity to grow the cultural economy in the area. There is, however, local strength in partnership working that we already have with a number of higher education institutions, such as the University of Leicester and the University of Northampton. Making the most of cross-boundary initiatives to create scale and impact. We see success, for example, with Northamptonshire and Rutland Open Studios, which works across area boundaries. Over 5% of businesses in North Northamptonshire are cultural and creative businesses. This is higher than in the East Midlands area, but lower than the England average. According to Arts Council England, however, residents in North Northamptonshire engage with arts, culture and heritage much less than the national average across all indicators. Culture tourism creates over £249 million annually to the North Northamptonshire economy. But as we've already heard from the chair of the Scrutiny Committee, Arts Council England invests only £1.80 per head in this area compared to £6.19 in West Northamptonshire and £12.16 nationally. So those insights were really valuable in bringing the master plan together. So the master plan aims to focus energy and resources to achieve maximum impact, to ensure that culture becomes a cornerstone of community cohesion, economic development and of placemaking. A key aim, therefore, is to attract increased resources for arts and heritage across the area, particularly through organisations such as Arts Council England. And it provides a framework that enables each local area and organisation to contribute, as I said, taking a real place-based approach. So the master plan's vision is that the cultural sector will be a visible and valued contributor to community building, place shaping, health and well-being, and to the economy. The sector will be a strategic network working with shared purpose and combined impact, which we saw from the insights that currently it is not. Residents and visitors will actively contribute to growth in cultural engagement, creativity and diversity. So the master plan focuses on 5 strategic priority themes: placemaking, sector advocacy and leadership, for those working within the sector, community engagement, which is at the heart of what must be delivered and is delivered now, developing the skills of those people working within the sector, and then helping the sector to build capacity, but importantly to evidence impact, because that was another one of the areas where the insight showed that there's some great stuff going on, but we're not really good about evidencing through data and shouting about it. The master plan also goes on to define the role of the council in its delivery, to manage, facilitate, broker, advise and support, or sometimes just to get out of the way and let better placed partners do the delivery. The sector will continue to look to the council to provide a convening role, but we are not necessarily going to act as either the controller or the funder of the delivery of this plan. That is why it is proposed that a new cultural collaborative partnership is established to oversee the development of the action plan and the delivery of the master plan in its entirety. The council has limited capacity to do this ourselves and to progress without working collaboratively with the sector. Arts Council England have indicated they may be in a position to support a funding application for the purpose of setting up the collaboration or partnership, but it is unlikely that this funding will come directly to the council. That's why it's really important that we continue to work with key cultural partners and for them to decide the best ways to secure that funding in order to take this work forward. As has already been mentioned, once adopted, we will commission a local creative organisation to design the master plan for publication. That concludes my introduction to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And this council is really keen to lead the way in shaping North Northamptonshire. Eddie, our Chief Executive, and I visited the KC Centre at Kingscliff yesterday. What a fantastic facility that is. But what a fantastic area of North Northamptonshire that is, as I'm sure Councillor Harrison would agree. why would anybody want to go to the Cotswolds when they can go to beautiful stone-built villages in the north part of Northamptonshire? The Cultural Master Plan has strong links with the 2050 vision, and we recently had a meeting with our colleagues on the 2050 board, and they're so excited for the future of this vision, and this helps very much in that direction. A proud place, a prosperous place, and a proactive place, that's what we are all about for delivering for Northamptonshire. And of course, Kerry's team recently won the MJ Award for Chester House, and we need to make sure that we secure the future of schemes like that moving forward. And I believe this is the way to go, and I hope that the whole council can get behind and support this at the right time. Thank you very much for that. So I'd happily move the motion, but I'm sure other members may wish to speak. Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chair. And I was really impressed with this report. I've got to sit back actually because I got told off by my wife for leaning into the microphone. So I hope that's that's better. But
yeah.
So I hope you can still hear me. But I think culture is a bit like gravity. You can't actually see it, but it holds us all and centres us all. And I think this cultural master plan is a framework document for actually doing that. I think that the culture, arts and our heritage in Northants are really important. They're important to me, and I'm sure they're important to all of the residents of Northants. I believe that this master plan will promote a strong sense of community. It will bring people together and contribute to better health and well-being of our residents. And it also brings together like-minded businesses for the good of all across our county. So I support this cultural master plan, and I think, as I said, it will be for the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members wish to speak?
Do I have to?
Does any other members ahead of? I'd like you to sum up, if you
sorry.
may. So Jan O'Hara, Councillor O'Hara.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I just think this is a fantastic opportunity to really bring our culture to the forefront. We have fantastic facilities across Northamptonshire, and I think to have a thriving economy in Northants, we must create the right environment for the culture and the arts and the heritage to grow. We've already mentioned, we have our open studios. Within Burton Latimer, we've got a heritage museum, and that is used by so many people around the world when they're tracing their history and going back and finding family. And we've recently just had a family reunited who didn't know existed, and they came from Australia, which was incredible. And it's people that are so invested in our heritage, so invested in our culture, that are bringing that together. People opening up their homes to look at their artwork is just absolutely amazing. And to me, I found it enthralling that they're able to do those kind of things. And I think really having our partners and using the shared prosperity funding to develop the cultural master plan shows a clear intent from the council that we want all to benefit from the fantastic assets and cultural opportunities that are present in Northants. And I think actually at the moment we are delivering very tangible physical and mental benefits that are helping the well-being of our residents. And I think it's imperative really that we enhance the offering across Northants, and I think we're doing that, and we're showing that in the awards that we're bringing home, and all the work that we are doing within our communities, and the work that we do linked with the universities and linked with our schools. So we're making sure that we're bringing all generations forward. Thanks for that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
As someone who moved from London in the year 2000 to come up to Northamptonshire, I've always said this is a hidden gem and everyone should come and live here, because I love living here, and this cultural master plan brings that all together. Oh, yeah. And so I'm really looking forward to how this cultural master plan develops and positively impacts on our children, families and young people for the future. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Wilcox.
Finally, sorry. Yes, I'm delighted to move the Cultural Master Plan for the approval and adoption. Anything that highlights the fantastic jewels and assets of the county should be supported and welcomed. I mean, I've been taken to several places, but the Kettering Art Museum was mind-blowing, the value of the paintings and the local artists. We've got such a fantastic array of history and art and culture that we should and will support it fully. So it is very good to see. The Cultural Master Plan will help us to do this and is helping to create a great foundation to enable more cultural, art and heritage initiatives to thrive in North Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, Louise, if we could change that Councillor Wilcox is proposing. I jumped in far too soon. Do we have a seconder? So, seconder from Jan O'Hara. Thanks for that. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So now we move on to item number 10, and that is safe accommodation, domestic abuse commissioning. And again, I'd like to invite Kerry to present this report in Jane's absence. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval from the Executive to undertake, jointly with West Northamptonshire Council, a compliant procurement route to commission safe accommodation, which more commonly known as of refuge provision, for victims and survivors of domestic abuse and, where necessary, their children within the whole of Northamptonshire. The new contract will commence on the 4th of April 2026 and is entirely funded from external government grants that are provided to both councils for domestic abuse safe accommodation. The report sets out the statutory duty the council has in relation to the provision of safe accommodation for victims and survivors of domestic abuse. It outlines the current arrangements in place for the provision of safe accommodation and explains some of the evidence from recent strategic needs assessments undertaken relating to the demand, quality and service user feedback, all of which have been used to inform the specification for the new contract. Both councils currently have contractual arrangements in place paid through annual grants with our key domestic abuse service providers, EVE and Northamptonshire Domestic Abuse Service, for the provision of refuge accommodation. These services form part of a wider ecosystem aimed at addressing domestic abuse. Collectively, the two providers currently offer a total of 51 safe accommodation units across various locations for individuals and their families fleeing domestic abuse. The current grant arrangements, however, were originally established by the former sovereign councils and have been extended over the past 4 years on an annual basis and are due to expire at the end of March 2026. And whilst the providers have performed well under these arrangements, it is now preferable to implement a more robust service model under formal contractual arrangements. This will better align the Domestic Abuse Act legislative requirements and reflect the recommendations outlined in the most recent needs assessments. Additionally, given the value of the service, as in the monetary value of the service, it is essential to comply with procurement regulations to establish a more sustainable long-term funding model for the provider market, rather than relying on the short-term annual funding arrangements that currently exist. The contract will be county-wide and is being procured on behalf of both the councils by West Northamptonshire Council, but obviously North Northamptonshire Council through officers both within the Community Safety Service and procurement and legal teams are involved in that procurement. The Domestic Abuse Act 2021 provides helpful definitions of safe accommodation because it isn't just about the physical accommodation spaces. It's also about making sure that we can provide services for people with additional needs such as addiction. We need to be able to provide a dispersed accommodation because group accommodation doesn't work for everybody. It also includes providing target hardening schemes for victims who can remain in their own properties. But also it's about making sure that victims who do go into refuge have move-on options, so that the refuge is a crisis accommodation and is not used for exceptional long periods of time. But it also includes wraparound support. So obviously the day-to-day management of that accommodation, but support for those victims and survivors in terms of practical support, enabling support, advocacy, domestic abuse prevention and advice, support to children experiencing domestic abuse, and then ongoing housing support to help people move into more settled accommodation moving forward, as well as the critical services around counselling and therapy. So in terms of the funding, the Council has received funding from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government for safe accommodation since 2021. The funding has increased year on year from the original amount of £664,000 in 21-22 to £862,756,000 in this financial year. The government funding agreement makes it clear that safe accommodation must reflect defined quality standards and be delivered by specialist providers. The intention under the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021 was to create a national network of safe accommodation. Yes, it's important that where it is safe to do so, people are housed locally in safe accommodation, but we also need to recognise that that isn't often the safest option, and therefore the idea is that people can move across areas into safe accommodation, and so it's about reciprocal arrangements with other local authorities. In 2023 to 2024, the safe accommodation services in the county received a total of 505 referrals. Demand is increasing, and the number of clients accessing refuge provision has increased by 64% from 2021-22 to 22-23, and it continues to rise. The report sets out the high-level aims and objectives of the new contract. It will be procured for a three-year period with the option to extend for a further 1 + 1 year period. The estimated contract value is £1.5 million per year, split 50-50 between the two councils, equating to a commitment of £750,000 by Northamptonshire Council in the first year of 2026 to 27. It's proposed to incorporate a 2% annual inflationary uplift. So it isn't a cheap service to provide, but it is an absolutely essential service. The grant has been awarded annually by the government since 21-22. In April 2025, the spending review allocated a further £160 million for domestic abuse safe accommodation for this financial year, which was an increase of £30 million from the previous year. I think it's important to note, as laid out in the report, that we haven't yet received a multi-year settlement, but there is indications from the government that that is the intention, to move away from annual grants and to move toward multi-year settlements, because this would enable a more preventative approach and provide greater stability. So members will notice that in the report there is some risk around the longer term funding, but we are confident that we will receive news later in the year about a multi-year settlement. Until the grant is confirmed, the contract will be awarded with appropriate break clauses, subject to availability of funding and successful performance of the contract. It should also be noted that even without a government grant, the council has a statutory duty to provide safe accommodation, and so we obviously take that into account as we build the MTFP for the council, because it is a pressure if we were not to receive that grant. That concludes my introduction to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. A very detailed and comprehensive report. And yes, there is risk, but there's also risk in not providing safe accommodation to people that have suffered and are suffering domestic abuse. Over to you, Councillor Wilcox. You're obviously chomping at the bit.
Yes, I am. Sorry. These are the sort of reports that really set out the importance of the Council's work that people don't often know about, ensuring there are safe places for people experiencing domestic abuse and their children, and at times in their lives where abuse increases their vulnerability, is one of the many statutory duties that we are required by law to provide, and I wholly support I'm wholly supportive of the approach to jointly commission this work alongside with our friends in the West. Many of our residents have important supportive networks across Northamptonshire, and commissioning sufficient and varied enough accommodation are so important in enabling people that require this support to remain connected to the people that are important to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any other members? Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
I'm fully supportive of the approach to work with West Northampton Council to commission this accommodation. These types of service and accommodation are a lifeline at a point of crisis, especially when we're trying to support children that have experienced domestic abuse in the family. As Greg said, ensuring people experiencing abuse can still maintain important connections with their friends, family and their communities that support them. And this has the potential to be better achieved if we procure this accommodation across the whole of Northamptonshire.
Okay, any other members wish to debate? Councillor O'Hara.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just put on record really the work that our officers do with our families that are suffering, because they are absolutely amazing in how they help and support families and support the children and try and make sure that those families do stay together and get an accommodation, and making sure that they're aware of the support that is out there, because some families haven't really got a support network locally. And when children have suffered abuse, it's a long-term effect, and the work that goes on with that and the connections that are made of our partners is absolutely imperative, and it really is an accolade to our officers for the work that they do, because they genuinely care to make sure that our residents are cared for and looked after. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely, well said. So we have a mover, which is Councillor Wilcox, and can we have a seconder? That'd be Councillor Elizabeth Wright. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So now we move on to item 11, a school I know very well, the Avenue Infant School Extension. Yeah, we've got, I've just got two different lots of papers here. To introduce the report, I'd like to invite George Candler, Executive Director of Place and Economy and Director of Children's Services, amongst his many roles. Hopefully not for too much longer with regard to the latter one. So could you please introduce the report, George?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update the Executive on the Avenue Infant School Extension Project. And the Avenue Infant School is based in Wellingborough, for those that may not be aware. And this follows the approval of the project back in August 2023. And it's also seeking approval from the Executive for the procurement of a contractor in relation to this specific project. The Avenue Infant School is a two-form entry, as you can see under Section 4, reception through to Year 2, and there are 6 classes in total. There is a dedicated Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Coordinator, commonly referred to as SEND, and teachers actively provide differentiated learning opportunities suited to pupil-specific needs. And this growing school now requires additional learning spaces which will enhance the learning and development needs of these pupils. You'll note in section 4.2 that the school has a dedicated room at present for one-to-one and sensory use. However, its location within the school is detached, and by expanding these facilities and crucially placing them at the heart of the school will provide a practical solution and will help to keep the special educational needs and disability spaces in a central location in the school. You'll see funding is secured under the table in 4.2, and that totals £859,000, and you'll see that that is budgeted from the high needs block. The approved design has also received planning permission. That was back in January of this year, 2025, and whilst the building plans have been delayed slightly, some of the issues that you can see articulated in 5.7 have now been resolved, and you can now see the details in terms of next steps and those key activities clearly listed under Table 3, 6.3 within the report. And this will ensure that the school has the new facilities in place for the start of the new term in September 2026. So I'm pleased to say this is a significant investment into one of our maintained schools in Wellingborough, and it's very much about improving the quality offer for our children and young people. And I therefore draw members' attention to the recommendations in 3.1 for the reasons set out at 3.2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, George. I'd now like to invite members to debate this from the floor. Open it up. Councillor Elizabeth Wright.
Chair, thank you. So I'm pleased to introduce this report, which makes a vital step forward in our continued investment in high-quality SEND provision. The Avenue Infant School is a growing school with a strong commitment to inclusion, and this extension will create much-needed centrally located space for one-to-one and sensory work, ensuring the right support is available for pupils with high needs from the moment they arrive. The scheme is fully funded through the High Needs Grant, and while there has been a revision to the project timeline due to third-party land access, I'm confident that the updated schedule will still enable us to deliver the new provision in time for the 2026 academic year. As Executive Member, I support the recommendation to delegate authority so the procurement process can proceed promptly, allowing works to begin as scheduled in April 2026. This is exactly the kind of forward-looking project we need to ensure that every child has access to the right learning environment, and I commend the report to the Executive.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Cheatley.
Yeah, can I second the report, which I welcome, the proposal to expand SEND teaching and ancillary spaces in direct response to the rising demand for specialist provision, which we've already highlighted today, including the essential need for physical, accessible learning environments. It's the Council's responsibility to ensure that all children have access to safe, appropriate and high-quality educational settings. This investment represents an important step toward meeting that obligation and advancing one of our key strategic outcomes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chris McGiffin.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say I underscore every point that Councillor Wright made about this proposal. I believe that the provision of the Avenue Infant School is crucial to the... I'm leaning forward, sorry, Brian. To children and young people, excuse me, as well as the staff at the school. We have a statutory duty to secure school places, and failure to send appropriate local SEND places creates significant reputational risk for council. But that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because it improves the quality of the facilities and helps ensure we're giving the best possible start in life to our children. I'm fully supportive, as I mentioned earlier, and I recommend of the report and the recommendations within it.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Just a really quick one from me, just to echo everything that's been said about the benefits of this funding. I am genuinely excited to see the results, but actually I think we need more of them across the county, and if there's any way of getting any more funding for them, then let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I really think this is a very good news story. The recommendations are set out on page 218 of the agenda pack. They have been, well, can we have a mover? We've got a mover, is Elizabeth Wright, seconded by Councillor McGiffin. All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you ever so much for that. And so we move on to item number 12, which is the capital programme update for 2025-2026. And I'd like to invite Claire Edwards, Executive Director for Finance, to introduce this report. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to request and note approvals for the capital schemes to be included in the Council's approved capital programme. Items to be included are set out in detail in Section 5, which includes the amendment to the capital programme for the additional funding from the Department of Transport for grants of circa about £51 million, which we've already discussed previously on the agenda. and together with other amendments relating to community facilities, school efficiencies programme and IT strategy. I'd like to take us though to the recommendations that are set out in section 3.1, in particular drawing your attention to A to D, which outlines the uplifts and reductions that we are seeing for each grant that we've now been notified of in relation to the impact for each financial year and for the grant that we need to actually include within our capital programme over the medium-term financial years up to 28-29. This now aligns the budget to reflect the £51 million additional grant that we are now receiving of funding through Northamptonshire, which is significant in our capital programme and exceedingly welcome within that space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to now invite members to debate this from the floor. Councillor Graham Cheatley.
I'm really pleased to present this report, which sets out a significant additional investment of £51.2 million into the Northamptonshire's local road network and active travel infrastructure. This funding will not only support essential improvements to the existing network, but also enable a broader programme of works to be delivered across the region as part of our medium-term plan. And I would approve the recommendations in the report.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor McGiffin.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I'm delighted as a self-confessed petrol head. The better condition our roads are in, the better it is for everyone. So I'm very pleased to see that. But during my short tenure in this role, I have attended many other functions and meetings, not least of which relate to the use of our bridleways and greenways and other cycle and walking areas. And the extension of the euphemistically named LC WIP, I have learned, forms part of this, and I'm delighted to see that not only will it kick off with the Montague Street Cycle Scheme in Kettering, but there are similar schemes at an advanced stage for adoption later in the term of this administration in Wellingborough and Rushden, Raunds, Higham Ferrers and other major towns. And I underscore the pleasure in assuming this extra funding, and I look forward to it being more than just highway spend, and I commend it to this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Anyone else? No, in that case then we can move to the recommendations that are set out on page 226 of the agenda pack. Moved by Councillor Cheatley, seconded by Councillor McGiffin. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much on that. Members of the public will be pleased to know, and I'm sure members, that we have no other urgent items of business to attend. I'd like to thank members, officers and the public who have been in attendance today. Can I put a plug in for people to engage in the resident satisfaction survey? It is a real great opportunity for us to listen to the priorities of our residents as we aim to deliver an exemplary council within the 4-year term of this council. Thank you for watching on YouTube.